So what I want to do first is just ask you guys. Oh, nice. Jared's here. Great. All right. Jared's connecting to the audio. Boom. Hey, Jared, what's up?
Hello.
What grade are you in, Jared?
Repeat that, please.
What grade are you in?
Ninth grade.
Okay, cool. So let me start by saying this workshop today is about debunking conspiracy theories. And the word debunking is like a fancy word for explaining. Okay, so what I want to know is, like, just in the chat, can you guys type in, like, what did you want to get out of this today? Like, what do you want to learn from it? Like, what are you, essentially, what are you here for? So just type that into the chat, just so I can get a sense of like where everybody is right now. Hey, Jacob.
Oh.
So in the chat, just type in what brought you to this today. Okay, somebody says they're not sure. Somebody said it sounded interesting. Another one said it interesting. Somebody said, I love proving conspiracy theories wrong. Okay. Somebody said the common Bush did 9/11 conspiracy theory. It's a classic one. Okay. Somebody said cooking glitched, and this was a close second. Sounds good. All right. So let's just start with this, right? People want answers. That is what conspiracy theories start from, is that people want explanations for things. And they want an explanation that to them makes sense. The problem with life is complicated, And any of you who have ever tried to explain, like, why does your friend act the way they do? You're like, oh man, how much time do you have, right? A lot of you have always struggled with trying to figure out, how do I explain something complicated to somebody who just asked me a quick question? It's the same way when people are like, hey, how's it going? And you're like, how's it going? What the fuck? How's it going? It's crazy. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I've got all this stress, things. And you could spend 5 minutes talking about how's it going. But instead of spending 5 minutes talking about how's it going, you just give them something quick. You just say, it's good. It's okay. It is what it is, right? Sometimes be like that. Like, you just say these things to like summarize it for people, because people don't want complex, long, boring, intricate answers to their questions. They want it to be quick and easy to understand. What conspiracy theories do is they give people answers without having people doing a lot of the work, right? So a conspiracy theory is easy to understand. That's the first part about it. They're always pretty easy to understand. It's a very simple thing. So I'll give you an example of one. 9/11 is a perfect example, right? On 9/11, there are people who will say that it was planned, right? And it was planned because the government put bombs in the World Trade Centers, and then they got these terrorists to hijack the planes, crash them in, and then they blew up the bombs because there's no way that jet fuel can melt steel beams enough to collapse the towers. And they did this as a reason to invade Iraq and to take away a lot of our rights, right? So that's what they say. The problem is that when you start asking them a lot of questions about this, they don't have answers. And so this is the easiest way to know that a conspiracy theory is full of shit, because you ask questions to somebody and they don't have answers for you. And they're just making things up to try to answer these questions that really can't be answered because the conspiracy theory doesn't make sense. There are some conspiracies that were true. I'm not saying there's never a conspiracy, but a conspiracy is when you have people in power planning something and then lying about what they're doing. And they all have to keep the lie a secret, but their plan actually is working, but they're keeping the plan a secret. And so the trick is, how do you keep it a secret? Well, you have to keep it a secret by making sure that everybody involved doesn't talk about it. You have to have no written documentation. There can't be, I mean, especially now in this day and age, no emails, no text messages, right? You can't have any records of those things. So conspiracy theories, or I'm sorry, conspiracies are pretty hard to pull off. It's really easy for somebody to just like blow the lid on it because you kind of can't get things done with just a few people. You need hundreds, if not thousands of people to pull off a plan. And to keep them all quiet is very difficult. So let me just check in. Ask me any questions you have so far about everything I just said or anything I just said. And you guys can unmute yourselves too to ask questions as well. You don't have to just type them, but typing them is fine too. Oh, and I didn't realize the chat was set to privately just to me. All right, so somebody asked, is the coronavirus a conspiracy? This is a good question because all conspiracy theories start with a really good question. There is something that people don't understand, they want an answer to. And conspiracy theories usually start by saying, hey, we found something true. There is one true thing. And then we're going to take that true thing and build this entire world of fiction around that true thing, right? So then when somebody tries to say, yeah, but you know, this theory's kind of wrong, and then they can say, yeah, but what about this one true thing, right? Isn't that one true thing true? And then you say, well, yeah, that one true thing is true. And they're like, well, see, there you go, right? The whole thing must be true, right? And so that's actually how conspiracy theories are hard to disprove, is because there's truth in the middle, right? And then Nikolai says there's a better conspiracy theory about putting chips in people through the vaccines. Okay, that is another weird conspiracy theory, right? Because this assumes that we have microchips that are so small they can be injected into people. Okay, so immediately you're like, okay, well, is that true? And if you really want to debunk a conspiracy theory, the first thing is that true, right? How do we know that? Where's the proof? And the more you start seeking for the proof, the easier it is to figure out that conspiracy theories are really hard to prove because they're fake. And they're fake. Here's another way you can know that they're fake, right? Conspiracy theories work like this. A lot of people will say, oh man, you just got to keep pulling the thread. The conspiracy theories, they don't want you to know this, but there are a few people who have revealed just a few secrets that let us know the bigger picture. And it's like, that's not how real people work. Real people, when they find out something is fake, they release the whole thing. They tell you, yo, there's this massive conspiracy going on. And then we all know. They don't happen like mystery novels, right? They don't happen like in movies. That's fake, right? In the real world, when somebody has some truth to give you, they give you the whole truth. They just reveal everything. They don't give you like one little piece of the truth. So is the coronavirus a conspiracy theory? Absolutely not. It's a virus. Lots of things are viruses. It's a pretty deadly virus. I mean, you know, relatively speaking, right? It's deadlier than the common cold. It's not as deadly as like the avian flu or SARS that happened a few years ago. You know, those are deadlier, but it's a virus. It spreads really easily. It's airborne. And because nobody is vaccinated against it and nobody has any natural immunity, it spreads pretty quickly. The same way measles does, the same way smallpox did, you know, like to wipe out, you know, 90% of the Native Americans. Like, it's just a virus. It just happens. Nature has viruses, right? And viruses are made by, you know, again, processes of evolution, right? That's as simple as that. But a much better story, the much more interesting story, is that the Chinese government are trying to, in some way, control people. And so they made this virus. They made it in a lab and they released it to people, even though they have no control over it. And even though they have no vaccine for it. And it has killed millions of people all over the globe because China thinks that killing people is a good way to control people. And the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. How is killing people a good way to control them? Isn't China killing their own people? If China wanted to control people, how would they do that? Don't they sell things to people? Hey, if China sell things to people and people are dying, isn't China losing customers? Isn't that a bad way to control people and make money, is to literally kill your customers? And the more questions that I ask, the easier it is for me to realize that there's no way that's true. I mean, there might be a reason this has happened that I don't know, but I don't think it's a conspiracy. All right, go ahead. Pop some questions in about anything I just said so far. No questions? All right, I want to show you guys a video about conspiracy theories. It's not going to be that long either. Okay. Nikolai, oh, this is interesting. Nikolai says, is Putin being the endless president in Russia a conspiracy proven right? No, it's not a conspiracy. It's just corruption. It's literally just Vladimir Putin is trying to stay president. And so in Russia, they have a president and a prime minister. He was president for a while, then he became prime minister, and he's winning elections because they're suppressing the votes of people who disagree with him, and they're not allowing other candidates to run against him. It's just classic corruption, using government to benefit yourself instead of using government to benefit the people. So it's not really a conspiracy because we know what's going on. You know, that's the other thing about conspiracies. If you prove a conspiracy and you reveal it to the public, it's not a conspiracy anymore because it's not hidden. Then it's just like your plan to, you know, to be corrupt. Okay, Jared asked a good question. He says, but every 100 years there's a pandemic. Was that a conspiracy or is it by chance? First of all, is it every 100 years? Because there was a polio epidemic about 70 years ago. And there was a measles outbreak last year in 2019. And there's actually outbreaks of disease constantly. I mean, I traveled to Senegal in 2004. There was 2005, and there was a polio outbreak in West Africa. So that's the thing. Like when people say, oh yeah, but every 100 years, you're like, well, hold on a second. What do you mean every 100 years? See, conspiracy theories use these facts and they say like, hey, but what about this fact? And then you're like, well, is that really a fact? And so that's the question, is they're based on a premise. They're like, you lay down some facts, and then on top of those facts, you build a reality, a fake reality. And the problem is that a lot of conspiracies are built on incorrect information. For example, there's not a pandemic every 100 years. There was another meme I saw going around that every time there's an election, there's a pandemic. Well, that's not true either, because sometimes there's an election and there's no pandemic. Sometimes there's an election in America, there happens to be a pandemic going on in some other place, like in India. Does that mean that the pandemic in India was like an accident and it should have happened in America? Like, you know what I mean? So that's the thing, is a lot of these conspiracy theories, again, the more questions you ask, the more you're like, oh, wait, there's no way that's true. So let me play this video for you guys. Just want to share my screen. All right.
What makes a business a business?
We've shown you a lot of the weird and wild stuff on the internet. But why do people fall for conspiracy theories in the first place? Hey guys, welcome to Trackback. Today we're talking about why people fall for conspiracy theories and what you can do if somebody like your Aunt Janet starts to fall down the rabbit hole. More and more conspiracy theories are moving from the fringe corners of the internet into the mainstream because technology makes it easier to share and to find these theories. We chatted with Mick West, an expert in conspiracy theories and the author of Escaping the Rabbit Hole, to learn more about how and why people fall for conspiracies.
A lot of people get sucked into conspiracy theories simply because they saw something on YouTube. And this is something I've come across time and again. I ask them what their origin story was. Why did you get into conspiracy theories? And they just say, I just saw this one video and it really spoke to me. And then I saw another video and I saw another video and I saw another video.
Anybody who's dealt with a conspiracy theorist knows it's incredibly difficult to get them to change their mind. This often has more to do with someone's identity rather than the information being presented. A person's belief system is really hard to change.
The belief is something that overrides everything else. If you present evidence which contradicts the belief, they'll just go with the belief and they'll figure there must be something wrong with that evidence.
This is why sending Aunt Janet 30 articles that prove her wrong isn't going to work. Instead, try finding shared values that helps Aunt Janet see that you're on the same side and therefore make her more likely to listen. We know it can be frustrating to watch someone fall down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole. Believing in conspiracies can negatively impact your physical health, your finances, your social life, or your mental health. For example, if someone believes in the anti-vaccination conspiracy theory, their kid could suffer the consequences of that. Or if someone believes that chemtrails are spraying poison from the sky, they might spend way too much money on bogus detox cures. Conspiracy theories can also isolate people as they're judged or made fun of by others. So then what the hell can you do to help Aunt Janet?
Everybody has this idea of this kind of spectrum of, ridiculous ideas on one side and sensible ones on the other side. And they draw a line somewhere on that spectrum. For example, they might believe that 9/11 was an inside job, but they don't believe in chemtrails. Or they might believe in chemtrails, but they don't believe in the flat earth. But you've got to find the things where there's a bit of doubt. Find things where they might be able to move their line a little bit from one side to the other.
If you're concerned your friend or family member may be becoming a conspiracy theorist, there is no quick fix, but that doesn't mean you should give up. Trackback tip. Remember, it's all about how you present the information to Aunt Janet. Don't be aggressive or judgmental or expect it to happen right away. She's going to need time to absorb the information that you're giving her, and that could take weeks, months, or even years. That's this episode of Trackback. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and send this video to the conspiracy theorist in your life.
All right. So, questions. Anybody have any thoughts, questions they want to talk about that video or anything else they're now wondering? Jared says no. Okay, Nikolai has no questions. Thinks I should get ad block plus. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some specific conspiracy theories because I want to like show you guys what it would be like to try to debunk a conspiracy theory. So, hey, Daquan, you there?
Me? Yeah, I'm here.
How's it going? What brought you to this today?
I mean, I was just kind of interested in like the rabbit hole that people go through when they like think of conspiracy theories versus just like, I don't want to say common sense because a person that believes in a conspiracy theory has their own, or I guess everyone has their own kind of form of common sense. But like, yeah.
You can't use common sense, first of all, isn't a thing. Because common sense is oftentimes disproven by facts. And just because you don't have facts, it might lead you to believe something fake, right? For example, before we knew that the Earth, before we knew about gravity and what gravity was, right? People genuinely did think that the sun was moving and the Earth was staying still. The Earth was the center of the universe, right? And then the more we learned about gravity, about how bigger objects attract smaller objects, about centrifugal and centripetal force, the more we realize that there's no way that's true. There's no way that the sun is larger than the Earth, and yet the sun moves around the Earth, right? It's got to be the other way around, that the planets all revolve around the sun has this gravitational pull that's pulling it in. But that's the thing, you need knowledge, you need understanding of that. And you also need telescopes. So before you have a telescope, you can't actually figure that out, right? So Shadanya says, let's talk about the 9/11 conspiracy theory. Shadanya, lay it on me. What do you think? What do you think about 9/11? Let's do this. What do you think? And say it out loud. Oh, I got you. All right, cool. Your background's loud. All right, so type it. Type what you think, because 9/11 is actually something that I lived through it, and I spent a lot of time reading a lot of things about 9/11. And I also spoke to I know a lot of engineers as well. Okay, so Shadanya says, I feel like it was real, but I saw this conspiracy video and it was like how he thinks 9/11 was inside job, like the government was involved. Yeah, man. What do you think the government did? Oh, forgot all the details, but that was the gist of it, right? Okay. So who else has details? Let's talk about this. I'm sure you've all heard the 9/11 conspiracy theories, right? That there were multiple planes, right? Two of them crashed into the World Trade Center because it was two towers, the Twin Towers. One of them crashed into the Pentagon. Another one crashed in a field in Pennsylvania because all the people in the plane, kind of like rebelled against the terrorists. So what do you guys think happened? Like, let's lay it on. Give me all the conspiracy theories you've heard. Just type them into the chat. Muhammad, you there? Kamani? Avi? Jacob? Javon? What do you guys think? Have you guys heard of the 9/11 conspiracy theory?
I've heard of it like a few times, but I don't believe it's true.
Okay.
It's just not beneficial for the government
Well,
in most ways.
it's interesting. What would be beneficial for the government, right? Because this is where conspiracy theories. Oh, Jared hasn't heard of
As
it.
far as oil, it's a little worth it, but just it's not worth it for the infrastructure damage. First of all, while you could there are easier ways to do it. America's a powerful country. You could negotiate, and America has aggressively negotiated with other countries. It's a simple operation. They've done it with Japan. They could have just done that. There you go, free oil.
Yeah. So the gist of the 9/11 conspiracy theory is this. People in the government, it doesn't get more detailed than that, right? People in the government wanted to take away people's rights. They wanted to invade other countries. And the thought was, okay, if we create a fake terrorist attack, it'll make people scared. And then it'll allow us to do two things. Number one, say, hey, in order to keep you safe, we have to limit your freedom. Number two, in order to keep you safe, we have to invade other countries where we think those terrorists are. And so how do you fake a terrorist attack? Well, the theory is that there were bombs planted in the Twin Towers. And they think that they were bombs planted in the Twin Towers because the story is that the planes crashed into the World Trade Center and then exploded. And then the heat of the planes made the building collapse. And people say, but that's impossible because jet fuel burns at a certain temperature. And in order to melt steel, it has to burn at a much higher temperature. And so that's how you know there must have been other ways they brought those towers down.
The thing is, first of all, they were not completely steel, and the jets were generally pointed in the way that they crashed. So when they actually rammed the towers, it sort of already bended the metal quite a bit. Because that's putting all of the force of the plane on a tiny little thing on the front.
Well,
it's a lot of centered force.
Yeah, and Jared, also keep this in mind. Buildings stay up when the steel is perfectly aligned. As soon as you start bending that steel, it doesn't support the weight above it, you know? And so the weight above it is pressing down on a unsolid source, on a weak source. And so that is what is actually going to push the buildings down. It's just a matter of physics and engineering. Yeah, exactly. And nobody who believes these conspiracy theories actually gets some engineers on, and especially some civil engineers that are very much about building structures like that. You know, Mr. Arias or Mr. McIntosh or Ms. Grimes, they can all tell you, look, here's exactly why that's impossible, right? But there is some truth to the idea that the government wants to take away our rights.
Well,
that is true.
America has one of the highest amount of rights in the world, and it's really bitten us in the butt quite a few times.
You know, the other thing is when the government wants to take away our rights, they don't really need to to like fake a reason to do it. They take away people's rights all the time with real reasons, or at least reasons they have. So faking a terrorist attack, destroying a bunch of infrastructure, right, isn't really necessary to do the thing that people think the government does. So a lot of times with 9/11, what I'll say to somebody is, yeah, man, the government does want to take away our rights. And then they're like, yeah, see, that's how I know it's true. And it's like, well, yeah, but the government just takes away rights without having a, a terrorist attack. Like sometimes the government just does it because they feel like it. Like, a few months ago, there were a bunch of people protesting in Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump wanted to walk over to a church and had to have his photo taken in front of the church holding up a Bible. But there were a bunch of protesters in the way. So what did he do? He told the National Guard to spray some tear gas and get rid of those protesters. He literally took away their right to protest for no reason. They were allowed to be there. And he just did it. And the government can just do this whenever they feel like it. Now, sometimes, they're going to get sued for it. Sometimes it's going to inspire even more protests, but they don't really need a terrorist attack to do that. The other thing is there's a lot of information that we know about 9/11 that, if you were to go to somebody and say, yeah, the government was involved in 9/11, you want to know what the government did? And here's the real conspiracy. The government during the Cold War wanted to hurt the Soviet Union. So what they did was they trained a bunch of Afghani and Saudi Arabian soldiers, not actual soldiers, but people they kind of turned into soldiers. They trained them in Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union that had invaded Afghanistan. And they gave them weapons, but they did it in secret because the Soviet Union couldn't know the US was doing it. So the US got other countries to give weapons to these Afghan and Saudi people who were fighting against the Soviet Union, and they defeated the Soviet Union's army and kicked the Soviet Union out of Afghanistan. And the US kept it all secret. And then after the Soviet Union fell, the United States abandoned Afghanistan. We didn't give them any help. We didn't build schools, hospitals, roads, any of the things we could have done to make Afghanistan a really safe place. And so a lot of these people in Afghanistan got together and they were like, you know what? We can take over this country. And not only that, we can get back at the US because the US had also been bombing a lot of Muslim countries, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon. And so a lot of these Muslim freedom fighters, they called themselves in Afghanistan, were also against the US. They weren't just against the Soviet Union, but it's like one battle at a time. And so then they turned against the US and started fighting against us. And they attacked our soldiers in several different places. They attacked our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. They attacked our soldiers in Lebanon. They attacked some of our boats. And they planned this big terrorist attack to use airplanes as guided missiles. And the US government didn't really know what they were doing, but the conspiracy was that they helped them in the first place. And so a lot of times it's helpful that if you know the full story, somebody drops a conspiracy theory on you, you can say, oh yeah, well check this out. Here's the real conspiracy. And then they're like, whoa, because people do want a conspiracy theory, or I'm sorry, people do want an explanation. The problem is that a conspiracy theory is just something they see on YouTube or see on the internet. And so it's an easy explanation. And so what you have to do is get yourself armed with a different explanation. It's not exactly helpful to say, hey, you're wrong, you're stupid. Nobody wants to be called stupid. And nobody wants to be told they're wrong. But if you can say, yeah, man, I totally get it, right? The government does lie to us all the time, but here's the lie. It's not that lie. That lie is actually a distraction, right? Because the government doesn't want you to know the real lie. If you knew the real lie, the government would be in trouble. So there's this other lie, and that's not even the real story. Here's the real story. So it's helpful to know the real story, which usually does have some secrets in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but just in general, there's a lot of I really don't see how the terrorists would be innocent as far as the bombing. I don't see any way because they showed their aggressiveness towards America. They were attacking America's allies. Like, for example, Israel. A lot of the Arabs attacked Israel for a long time. And
yeah, I mean, did you think that I was saying that the terrorists?
No, I know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I don't understand why this is still a conspiracy theory. There's so much evidence against it.
You're assuming that people like evidence and people believe evidence.
But why would you not?
In order to believe evidence, you need to understand some basic facts about science and how science works, right? And there are a lot of people who have a really shitty education. And there's a lot of people who don't really take advantage of their education. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people that go to school, but they don't really learn stuff. I mean, you can learn just enough to like barely pass a class or barely pass a regents exam without really understanding the way science works, which is that, first of all, in order to have any sort of proof of something, you need measurements, right? And those measurements, right, if they show you a pattern, which is like, hey, every time we do this experiment, it happens the same way over and over again. Just like every time I let go of my pen or anything else, it drops. Oh my God, every single time, every single object that I hold up here and I drop, it falls to the ground. There's a pattern. And so patterns and measurements then lead scientists to make conclusions about, hey, if this happens, then it's probably going to lead to this. And so there's that logical pattern of if this, then this, if this, then this, if then, if then. And so understanding how logic works, if this happens, then it will lead to this. That's like the basis of understanding how science can prove something. And if you're not a logical thinker, right? If you've never been trained to like ask why and understand that if this happens, it leads to that and prove it, it's going to be really easy for you to be tricked by a conspiracy. And that's why a lot of conspiracy theories have worked. You know, the more into the past you go, conspiracy theories worked a lot better, because without formal education, and especially without good science classes and understanding logic, it's really easy to trick somebody, especially if people believe things they can't prove. And there's a lot of people that believe lots of things they can't prove, you know, and that's, you know, that's fine when it doesn't hurt anybody. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's gonna, like, if I say like, oh man, I just drove to my parents' house and thank God I'm safe, you know what I mean? Because like, like Jesus had me in his heart, and so Jesus didn't let anything bad happen to me. You know, that's fine. Until I start saying, you know what, I believe Jesus has me in my heart so much, I'm not going to buckle my seatbelt. And I'm also going to drink before I drive. And I'm not going to buckle my kid's seatbelt. And I'm going to let them drink, because who cares? Jesus has me in his heart. And as soon as you start doing things that could actually harm you and other people in real ways, that's when the beliefs start to be a little bit more caustic and dangerous. But there are a lot of people that believe things they can't prove, and they're harmless.
But
And
cases
there's
like
people,
this even
say it
come
again,
from cases like this.
like what?
Like, let's say someone who believes in, a religious guy, right? Who, let's say, is not really informed on the Bible, let's say,
Yep.
but still would. Like, the Bible is definitely a source of knowledge. But one of the things it specifies is, you know, God will not exactly help you unless you are trying to help yourself.
I
So
mean,
just a
if you
lot of
believe that part of the Bible, there are some people
yeah.
that believe that God will help you if you believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. That's all you need,
Yes.
is to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He was sent here and crucified to save the souls of all mankind and erase our original sin. And as long as you believe that, that's enough. You will get into the kingdom of heaven just based on that belief. And there are Christians that will then use that to say, this is why Jews and Muslims can never enter the kingdom of heaven, is because they don't believe that Jesus Christ was the actual Son of God. They just believe Jesus Christ was a regular old prophet, maybe somebody that God spoke to, but not exactly the Son of God. And so there are some Christians that think that all you need is that belief. There are other Christians who are like, no, you need to do good works, right? That God looks at you and says you need to do good, and then you will be rewarded, essentially. Is that the more good you do, the more merit you built up for yourself.
It's all based off the same book. But so what happens is the Christians believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah and he already arrived, while the Jews and Muslims believe that the Messiah has not arrived yet, and the Messiah will pretty much, raise them back to the top.
Exactly. And that, again, when the apocalypse happens, right? And there's going to be a big, like, this is in the book of Revelations, that there's going to be, an end of days, and everybody who will be judged at that moment, right? But you can't prove any of this. So, this belief might not hurt anybody until they start acting on it, right? So I can believe in my heart of heart that God loves me because I'm straight. As soon as I start telling gay people I'm going to vote in a way that makes sure you can't see your loved ones in the hospital because your marriage isn't legal, then it's like, okay, well, slow down a little bit. Now you're using your beliefs to like take away somebody else's freedom and happiness. And so, that's like this is where like beliefs are kind of like in a realm where they could in fact hurt people. And as soon as they cross a certain line, then it's a little bit dangerous. And so that's why some conspiracy theories, they're less important. Some people believe the moon landing was fake, that they faked the whole thing. They filmed it on a set and it is fake. And you know what? I don't know if that belief really hurts anybody. I don't know if it really does until somebody says, I'm going to vote for this senator because this senator wants to end NASA's budget because NASA is fake and we don't actually send spaceships out into the, to the moon because that never happens. And then you're like, well, NASA does a lot of really important research and they launch a lot of satellites and they help us figure out what the weather is, which is going to help us to figure out how to protect us from natural disasters. And they also measure like the heat in the atmosphere so they can figure out stuff with climate change. So we can't get rid of NASA's budget, right? And so that's where, again, like you have to weigh like how important is it to debate somebody on a conspiracy theory, because you might make them really dig their heels in and be like, no, now I feel like I'm even more right because you're trying to prove me wrong and you're the enemy and maybe you're the deep state and you've got the government's controlling you and they've entered your mind. And like, you don't want that to happen because you want them to be open-minded to you in case there is a conspiracy theory that they believe and it's a problem. And you really do want to say, okay, but I need you to not believe this. And if they're already against you, you kind of ruined your future ability to convince them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What else do people think? Josh is here. Hey, Josh, what's up? You there, Josh?
Oh, sorry about that.
All good. How's it going?
I'm good.
What brings you to this seminar?
Oh, the conspiracy. Well, I also like look into those things as well.
What's a conspiracy theory that you are like wondering, like if you should believe it or not, or if you're like, I know somebody who believes this and I want to prove them wrong, or what do you think?
I used to watch something on, what's it? I think it was the National Geographic, and they were saying how like they said Hitler faked his death, so they had some good points, but I'm like, it was believable, but that's something I still wonder to this day.
Why do they how do they say Hitler faked his own death?
Like they said like the scientists, they like found evidence that he was hiding somewhere, and that he had taken some underground train, and like he flew out to somewhere. And I remember watching it like when I was like 14, but like it's still like sits in the back of my head.
Yeah.
I think the show was like Finding Hitler or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, that's a conspiracy theory that I think doesn't really hurt anybody, because like it still doesn't negate the fact that Hitler caused the Holocaust. There are some people who think the Holocaust was faked, which is like, what? Like, there are some people who think that like all those concentration camps are fake and they were built just to trick people, and that 6 million Jews and 2 million gypsies and like homosexuals and communists and black people weren't actually killed, and that World War II was all based on just a lie. And the more you ask about that, you're like, that's a little weird, you know what I mean? But so I don't know, maybe Hitler did escape. Maybe he did burn 2 other people, and then we thought those were Hitler and his wife, and instead it was not, and Hitler escaped and he's living in Argentina somewhere, and he died because he was 50 in 1945. So has to be dead by now, and maybe he just did that to escape punishment. And maybe, I don't know, maybe, but that's a conspiracy theory that doesn't really hurt anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like thinking that the vaccine for COVID is going to implant a microchip in you that's going to make you controlled by the government. that's going to make people say, I don't want to take the vaccine. And if people don't take the vaccine and they are immunocompromised and they catch COVID and then die because of it, you know what I mean? That then there's a consequence to that, especially if that person like has a kid and now their kid doesn't have a parent because their parent was convinced to not take a vaccine that could have kept them alive. You know, like there are consequences to like health things. So Jared actually asked a good question. He was like, what about the Area 51? Like there's aliens and there's things from other worlds, right? And UFOs. Again, that's a conspiracy theory that maybe there are aliens. Maybe the aliens are being hidden by the government, but that's another one where I don't know if it hurts anybody to believe it. Like, okay, so what? You know, like, you know, is that like Jared, kind of like keep going with that. Like, so yeah, what if that is happening? Then what? Like, I think at the root of this, I'm like, why are you believing in the conspiracy theory? Like, does it help your life to believe in a conspiracy theory, or does it distract you from things that could actually help your life? Because there's a lot of people that will think like, oh man, you know, the government is lying to me, therefore I should not vote. Because it doesn't matter if I vote or don't vote, the government's going to do what they want. And in reality, that's not true. Like voting for certain people can actually get real policies to be passed where the government is now going to spend money in a way that protects your property, that enhances your education, that protects your health, that protects your safety, that can give you more abilities and more opportunities. Or other people win elections and they take opportunities away. And so, you know, when people's belief in a conspiracy theory is kind of useless to them, that's fine. But when people are distracted from actual real things the government is and is not doing, right? Then that's the problem, because there are some people that don't realize like, no, you know, like Joe Biden definitely wants there to be like a public healthcare option so that instead of buying healthcare from a company, a private company, you just buy it from the government. The government saves you money and now you have more money. So you can spend more money on things that you want, like a PS5 or food for your kid or something, you know what I mean? Like if, you know, and that's a real thing. And a lot of people don't know about that. And they don't know about that because they're watching YouTube videos all about how, you know, the 5G towers are causing COVID. And it's like, wow, you're using a lot of your brain power for something that's fake. And sometimes, and if you know it's fake, it doesn't matter. You know how people like argue all the time about like, oh man, well, what if Thanos had just done this? Or like, how come the Scarlet Witch could have destroyed the Mind Stone, but couldn't just destroy all the other Infinity Stones? And like people argue about Marvel movies, but sure, they know that that's fake. You know what I mean? The same way if somebody argue about like, oh man, what's better, like the current the 2000s Lakers or the 90s Bulls, and they like argue over these two basketball teams that were filled with all these great people. It's like you can argue about that all day long as you know that that doesn't really enhance your life in any way. But if people are arguing over things and they're ignoring the real stuff that could help them, that's where I'm like, okay, how does this conspiracy theory serve you? You know, like what is it doing for you? How is it helping your life to believe in this and talk about it? If it's just entertainment, cool, as long as you know it's entertainment. You know what I mean? Like I love watching movies about superheroes and superpowers and all that shit. I've been rewatching all the X-Men movies. I've rewatched all the Marvel movies during the pandemic. Like I've tried to, you know, like just, I like that stuff. But I also know that it is distracting me from, you know, real things like grading papers and stuff. So I don't let it consume me because it's actually hurting me when I spend time on the fake stuff instead of the real stuff. Nikolai says, I mean, all the conspiracy theorists die. I see this as a win-win situation. Nikolai, you're saying like if the conspiracy theorists don't trust the vaccine, they won't take the vaccine and then COVID might kill them? Maybe, except COVID's not that deadly. It only kills about 1% of the people who catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
So
like 3%. Now it's much less deadly.
yeah, the
because
the
it's
3% statistic is a little. It depends on where you are. So
Yeah,
like if you're in
in
a place,
America, you're pretty safe.
yeah.
Very safe.
Well, also like the 3% was more true in March when we didn't realize
Yeah,
what
when
to
people
do
were
to
just
keep
doing
people
whatever.
alive, when
I've had it.
hospitals were at
It's not that
capacity.
bad.
Yeah. So, and then Jared says it's really hard to figure out if a true conspiracy, figure out a true conspiracy, right? And when you get more search information about those things, you get more confused. Look, that's the problem with truth and with reality. It's complicated. And the more you ask questions, the more you will realize how complicated it is. This is why I trust experts. This is why when I'm wondering, well, how did the Twin Towers collapse? I immediately ask my friends. I got 3 friends who are engineers, and they'll tell me, oh, well, I can tell you exactly why buildings collapse and what makes them collapse. And I trust them because they understand engineering. And if I really wanted them to, they could prove it with the math. And I took physics, and then I took AP physics, so like I'm a little bit versed in that. But that's the trick about education: is the more of it you have, the more easy it is to understand like things that you just can't know unless you study it for a long time with people. The same way, how many of you, I mean, if you have a cell phone, scientists invented your cell phone. And they used the same methods to invent your cell phone that they did to invent the vaccines that you got when you were 0 to 12 or 13 years old. Scientists use the same methods to invent a cell phone, to invent vaccines, to build the subways. And if you guys step on a subway and trust the subway, you're trusting the scientists who built the subway, who are the same scientists you trust to build your phone. The same scientists you trust that, you are in a building right now with gas lines running through the building, and you trust those gas lines aren't going to explode because you trusted the government to send inspectors to the building site to make sure that the building was being constructed the right way. So that's the problem with the conspiracy theories. If you don't trust the government, it's like, whoa, then why do you drink the water? The water that comes out of your faucet, why do you wash dishes with the water? Because the government is the one that's cleaning and running all of the water filtration plants. So how do you know they're not putting poison in the water? You know what I mean? Like there's all these different ways to go with the conspiracy theory, where if you don't trust the government, or you don't trust Google, or you don't trust vaccines, if you take it to a really intense degree, you have to live off the grid. You have to like build your own house and grow your own food. You know what I mean? And filter your own water, because you can't, you know what I mean? Like at a certain point, you're like, oh man, if you don't trust that, you totally shouldn't trust this. And that's another way to get conspiracy theorists to like realize they're being a little ridiculous, is to like go to the extreme, go there with them. Be like, hell yeah, man, I can't trust the government. That's why I never use seatbelts, because those seatbelt laws were invented by the government. What the fuck do they know about my safety? I'm the one that knows about my safety. I don't need a seatbelt. I don't need a government to tell me what to do, and then they're like, well, no, I wear a seatbelt, Got a couple of people who joined. Jafet, how's it going?
I heard of this one conspiracy that the guy who made The Simpsons, that he's like from the future because of like the show, that they predict a lot of stuff that happens.
If you make 26 years of 24 episodes of a show, and you're just kind of like trying to build it about what really happens, you're going to accidentally get a lot of things right. There's also a lot of things they're going to get wrong, And so that's the other thing, is a lot of times conspiracy theories will look at, oh man, The Simpsons kind of predicted that Donald Trump might be president. I mean, sure, but like I could have said, like, I think Joe Biden might be president, in 1988 when he was running for president. And then in 1988 when he dropped out, people have been like, see, you're wrong. And then like 32 years later, when he runs again and he gets it right, people be like, oh my God, Feinberg, how'd you fucking know? How'd you know back in 1988 Joe Biden was going to, it's like, if you just say enough things, some things are going to turn out to be right, especially if they're realistic, and it's not unrealistic that a rich guy could run for president and win, Another comment. Somebody says about the coronavirus, something weird, because a lot of people died because of the coronavirus, but Donald Trump got infected. But at like 3 or 5 days, he was like, nothing happened, and he's very healthy. Donald Trump gets really good medical care. Also, most people who get the coronavirus don't die. I know that a lot of people die. Most people don't die. Again, 90% of people. Yeah, exactly. Only 1% of the people die.
In 100 people, 1 will die. So it's
exactly. And Donald Trump he wasn't immunocompromised. And he's not that old. Like 74 is old, but it's not crazy old.
For example, one of my family members actually, their immune system is compromised, but they actually survived it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
My immune system's not compromised. I did survive it. It's not the worst.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right? I know a bunch of people who have gotten coronavirus. Some of them were smokers. Some of them were overweight. Like, they
It's
survived.
dangerous, but it's not like kill you no matter what. Oh, you got it, you're dead.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Who else has some thoughts in the last 5-ish minutes that we're here? I'm glad you think that, Jared. So what I want to do is just send you this link that I think is super helpful. I'm just going to send it to everybody who is currently in here. Just want to make sure I have my list of people who are in here. Okay, slide that over. Who got Avinash Singh? Great. I've got Daquan. I've got Jacob Mrusi. I've got Jared Aguilar. I've got Javon. I've got Jafet. Joshua Blades. Who else we got? Kamani. Mohammed. Nikolai. And Shadanya. All right, so I just sent you a link, and I'm going to share my screen just so I can show you guys it. So again, a lot of people, you guys jumped on this to figure out, like, how do I disprove a conspiracy theory? How do I debunk it? It's a little bit more complicated than that. So in order to talk to conspiracy theories or conspiracy theorists, people who believe in them, there are a few things to bear in mind. First of all, it is very human and normal to believe in conspiracy theories, right? Because we want answers to things, and we also are primed to be suspicious and afraid of things that can't be explained. So, also, no one is above a conspiracy theory, not even you. Look, I'm going to be honest. When the news first broke that Donald Trump had coronavirus, my first thought was, I don't think he's got the virus. Because that guy lies all the time. Why is he telling the truth suddenly? I was like, this is a trick to make us all feel bad for him in order for him to win the election. I genuinely thought that for like a few days before it became very apparent that he's not tricking all these journalists. He's not tricking all these people in government. He's also an idiot, which means if he was going to be, planning something like, this elaborate, it would mean that he would have had to be smarter than he actually is, right? This guy had control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and he still couldn't repeal Obamacare. How dumb is he? Oh, wait, he could pull off this massive conspiracy theory. The more I thought about it, and the more, again, evidence came out that, like, no, he actually does have this, the more it was like, okay, what he probably was lying about is when he got it. He probably had the virus earlier than we think he did. So again, I could be susceptible to a conspiracy theory too. It doesn't matter who you are. No demographic is prone to conspiracy theories, right? Doesn't matter if you're young, old, black, white, rich, poor, immigrant, citizen, doesn't even matter, right? Social distancing makes conspiracy theories more appealing, right? Because when we are far apart from each other and we don't have a community, getting together on the internet does give us a sense of community. There's also some truth in them. That's the other problem with conspiracy theories, is there's a truth in them. And here's the other thing about them. There always is some other person that's dangerous, right? There's an other, and the other is against us. And we've figured out why they're against us. And that's another aspect of conspiracy theories. So there are these tricks on how to speak to a conspiracy theorist. Always speak respectfully, right? Don't call them stupid. Don't call them an idiot. Don't make fun of them. Don't make them feel small. Here's another thing. Don't do it in public. People don't like being embarrassed, right? If you try to prove somebody wrong on the internet, do it in private messages. Because if you try to do it in public, their defense mechanisms are going to kick up because they don't want people to think they're stupid in public. Also, test the waters first. You want to figure out, is this a waste of time, right? Because if they say, I'm never going to change my mind, okay, cool, that's fine, you know? Also, find places where you can agree with them, right? I agree the government does lie to us a lot. And that's my way of getting inside somebody's conspiracy theories. Say, hey, yeah, I totally agree. The government does take away our rights. And then try to figure out the places where you both agree. There's also this thing called the truth sandwich, right? Where you say, hey, here's what's true. Here's what you just said that I don't think is true. But then here's this other thing you said that is true. And so you try to like pull the true things out from their conspiracy theory and then say, oh yeah, but that one thing you said, yeah, that I know that's wrong, right? And so if you can poke a couple of holes in what they're saying, but pull the true stuff out, the true things remain. And then you can connect those true dots as opposed to letting the people connect the true dots with a lot of fake dots as well. The Socratic method is also good. That's where you just ask questions like, oh yeah, how do you know that? Or yeah, but what about this? Or, okay, but if they were doing that, then why were they also doing this? Which kind of goes against that, right? So you want to asking a lot of questions, pretending you're ignorant, just being like, yeah, well, sure, maybe, why, right? You want to be careful with loved ones, right? If the relationship is really close, how deep do you go? You know, because it could ruin a relationship in a lot of ways. And again, if some people don't want to change, no matter what the facts are, if it gets bad, you could really stop, you know. But also every little bit helps, right? Even if you don't prove them wrong in one conversation, a lot of these conversations might take weeks. They might take years. It's very, very tough. You know, it really is tough. Anyway, any final thoughts before we sign off? Jared says nope. Shadanya says nope.
Nope.
Nope. Nope.
Not really.
Not really. Okay, cool. And was this helpful?
Yeah.
In a way, I guess.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you guys so much for hanging out today, and I hope you'll have a good Thanksgiving if I don't see you until then.